Alright, hey guys, this is kGAULT again with another video just to kind of show you the build that I use to clear that nightmare dungeon. Definitely enough interest on YouTube and Reddit, so thank you for showing me your support. And on YouTube here, please don't forget to hit that sub button so I can try to grow the channel a little bit and maybe come out with some builds in the future as well. But I'm going to make this short and sweet, just kind of go through everything here with you. First, I'm going to basically show you the gear and why I chose what I chose. So on your helmet, of course, you're looking for stats of strength, cooldown reduction. Life is a huge one. You can see that my rolls on all this stuff isn't even the best, right? Imprints, we're going with the damage reduction because we're using flurry all the time. So we basically have a 20% damage reduction flat all the time. Right, we're gemming all of our gear with life because the entire build on Thorns is built around your health pool. Chest armor, we're going for massive damage reduction here. Bleeding, close, and fortified. We don't really care about distant because we're going to be using our abilities to bring things to us. So the last damage reduction you're looking for is going to be an armor percentage, or you can even go with a I think you can get strength or all stats on it as well. Now, the imprint, you have iron skin. Honestly, I don't, it's not that necessary. It is necessary for some of the super difficult dungeons out there, but really just for extra survivability and really the unstoppable portion. For some reason, when you get stunned, you are basically just dead meat. So between the shout and iron skin, you can always make sure you don't get stunned in the middle of 20 mobs or whatever it is. And again, you can see my rolls on this are not perfect by any means, so you can absolutely squeeze out a little bit better damage reduction from it. On the gloves here, again, terrible on the attack speed and the stats and the strength, but that's what you're looking for. Damage to injured, it's the only reason I use is this build specifically because we're Thorns. It doesn't benefit at all from critical strike damage. Our flurry does, but our flurry is really just to keep up our fortify and damage reduction. So we are stacking strength, all stats, attack speed, and extra damage buckets as we can. Pants here, and the imprint on this, we're doing berserking. We want to get that bleeding damage to every mob, right? Because that's going to affect the damage reduction that you receive from that mob. It increases the damage you do to that. It does a lot of different things, and I'll explain how that works as well to make sure that's 100% uptime. So pants here, again, massive damage reduction. You can get 4 super high rolls. And because we are a health pool build, once you have enough damage reduction, basically not to be one shot, then you can trigger your damage reduction while injured. And these are massive rolls. So once your health pool is below 35% health, you get an extra damage reduction bucket. And mine, right now, for injured, is 64.2%. So you see the damage and the health dropping, but once it drops to here, I get another 64.2% damage reduction on that damage. And that's why you'll also notice me not take potions, and I'll just kind of hover in that sweet spot there. So again, close, fortified, and bleeding is what we're looking for damage reduction here, and injured. Most important imprint are these right here on the pants. So the 35% chance to gain 1259 fortify whenever you deal direct damage. This is massive. So fortify is 52.5% damage reduction bucket. Huge, huge, huge. And you need to keep it up 100% of the time. Now, a lot of people think that when you use that shout that increases your health, you lose your fortify. That's not really the case. What it's doing is it's giving you more life, another 20% or 30% life, but it doesn't give you any extra fortify. And you have to be 100% fortified life to your life to be fortified. So with this, 1/3 of my attacks with Frenzy is giving me 1259 fortified, which is massive. That's why you'll see around my barrier when I'm in combat, I always have that fortified barrier. Even if I'm 100% health, 20% health, doesn't matter, I'm 100% fortified. And that's why, is that imprint right there. So boots, now this is strictly for pushing, right, because there's no movement speed or anything on it, but again, damage reduction while injured is the most important thing here with stats. I chose fortified generation just because that improves this 1259 here by 30%, just makes it easier to keep that uptime on fortitude. The imprint on it, I have that mainly for bosses as well as triggering mobs DR. When you pull them with chains 2 times, they can't be stunned again, or can't be pulled again. And it actually makes them unstoppable, which causes you to basically do a ton more damage to them. Make sure your boots have evade charges, especially if you don't have movement speed. Otherwise, it's just terrible. So we'll go to the neck here. Armor, you want to put that on your neck always, because basically the sweet spot here is 8500 with this being 75% uptime. As long as you have a 100 stack of it, you're basically at an 80% damage reduction from armor, which is the max. And that's what is the most important thing. You need to be between like 75 and 80% damage reduction from armor. Now, I went for cooldown reduction just because I want to keep those shouts up as much as possible. Damage reduction from fortified and close, and you can also get damage reduction from injured on your neck. But the problem is once you go above 50% damage reduction, your damage reduction gets a diminishing return itself. So you only get about half of the credit. So if it says 20%, it's only going to give you between like 9 and 10. But once you get above 60%, you actually only get, 30% of the stat. So even if you got a 40% damage reduction while injured, it's actually only giving you like an extra 9 or 10%. So it's really not worth it. And that's why I re-rolled this to strength percentage. And that's massive, right? You want as much strength as possible for this build, because that's what affects the base damage of Thorns, and I'll explain that as well. Resistances, a lot of people say they don't mean anything. Now, when I was trying to do nightmare builds, blind burrows is what I was doing, because I'm basically unkillable because of my poison resistance. This is an entirely other damage reduction bucket that affects basically every mob in that dungeon. And so I just have a passive extra 23% damage reduction bucket, and that's on top of all of these other things that you saw in the dungeon that I cleared. Nightmare or Blind Burrows is that much easier. I take 23% less damage from every mob in there. And so to do that, you just get the resistances to all your amulet, of course. But your rings, you want to make sure you have poison on both. Now I have a fire on one as well, and a lightning just to kind of even that damage reduction out, but poison is necessary, right? But again, I was pushing mainly for Blind Burrows. So, ring here, Bold Chieftains, that's sounds like pretty common. Reduce the cooldowns of all your stuff. You only need a 1.5 second roll or higher, and then it's a perfect roll on it, so that's all you need. Now this damage to injured enemies here, I would love to get a vulnerable roll on it, but I'm broke, I have no materials or anything, so it is what it is. Mainly you want life, close, vulnerable, and then doesn't really matter. These damage buckets are pretty useless, honestly. This ring here, again, vulnerable and close are the biggest ones, and life. Now this one would, my video is like on Murder Inc.'s YouTube. He said that this was, no one really uses this, but he hit it right in the head. So the imprint on this is whenever you get a kill, it basically gives you a chance to reduce your brawling skills. Now, with our shouts, one of our shouts is a brawling skill. And so it reduces that cooldown tremendously, so I can keep basically 100% uptime on my shouts without having to use that Harrogates or that unique chest or whatever it is. So yeah, that's why I use that. Now let's get to the weapons and how that works. So most important thing here is to put the Thorns damage dealt has a chance to deal damage to all enemies around you. Again, you want to put a perfect 80% roll on there. This is how we destroy everything as far as damage is concerned. And our damage is insane when you have enough mobs because of that. Now, as far as rolls on your weapons, your item power really doesn't matter at all. What you're really looking for is vulnerable damage, close damage, all stats, and strength. That's it. I put gems as basic skill damage in there because just none of the gems work for this build. So that's why. Now, weapon here, vulnerable, strength, and all stats. Again, those are the three things that really matter. And then I would prefer close on this, but I got damage all berserking, so be it. And again, this got brought up in a lot of the comments and all, was why do you use this fire damage? So this is probably, honestly, the most important part of the build. And because what it does is it hits everything around you. And you'll notice when I'm fighting the boss, just 1 versus 1, I still have 100% uptick of my armor. A lot of that's becoming from this fire damage, but on top of that, when you pull things to you, this fire damage is hitting everything around you, which procs vulnerable damage for the first 3 seconds every 30 seconds. So everything's vulnerable before it gets hit by your first Thorns damage. So it makes it do massive amounts of damage all the time, but it also puts bleeding on all the mobs instantly, which makes it so that, again, our damage reduction gets triggered. We want all that damage reduction to be in play every time we take damage. So that's why I use that. Keeps that armor stack up mainly, but also causes my bleeding damage to be on every bot or every mob. Next weapon here, again, strength and all stats, the most important things, and then vulnerable. Basic skills gain the attack speed. We want to do that so Frenzy's just attacking super fast to gain this fortify buff. Again, you always want to be 100% fortified no matter what. And the two-hander. Now, again, swords are not what you want to use. We benefit 0 from crit strike damage, so you want to use actually a polearm, this is what I was using before. But again, the most important stats here are strength, all stats, vulnerable, and close, and this just so happened to drop for me, and it's quite literally a perfect roll, or so close. Now you'll notice my Thorns damage is the bare minimum. This is because I did this dungeon after the patch where they nerfed all the Thorns damage. This used to say 11,000 something, and now it's down to 4,844, and luckily enough, I just got a ring here, which I'm going to upgrade. But again, no materials to do it yet. I can only do it once. So that I can maximize the Thorns damage on this, I'm going to extract the aspect, and then I'm going to imprint it on here. And that's going to give me that max roll on this, making this a little bit better. Now, another thing that some people were questioning in the video there were the consumables. And what I meant by that is the only thing that I use is this max life potion here. That's to increase this life pool. But you can also use 3 incense at a time. A lot of people, I guess, don't realize that. Some people may not even realize that incense are even in the game. I don't know. But you'll notice this says type 2, type 3, and type 1. I can use all 3 of these, giving me another 500 life, another 40 stats, which does another 40 strength. Plus it helps your crit and overpower damage if you care about that. And this one gives me another 25 strength. So another 65 strength plus 500 life on top of this. Pretty nice, right? On top of your 30%. And I didn't use any of that, but I do use this whenever I'm trying to push something crazy hard. For your expertise, we're using the two-handed weapon. That's just because we're trying to increase that vulnerable damage, and that's really the only thing that benefits Thorns, honestly. So over to our abilities here. Frenzy to start it off. Now the major reason we use Frenzy is again to stack that Fortify. We are stacking Fortify because of the imprint on our pants to increase our Fortify every third hit that we do. It doesn't matter how much damage you do, it just matters that you hit them. So Frenzy is the fastest stacking thing. We use that. It's going to give us more attack speed here once we're at max stacks, which is only 3 stacks. And we're also getting 24% damage reduction. Pretty nice. Now, when I don't push, I actually don't use Iron Shield at all. And I was using both of these. I was using Flay and Frenzy. Because Flay also gives you Thorns damage, makes things vulnerable, and gives you more damage reduction. That being said, you get into the diminishing returns of damage reduction, and this all shares the same bucket. So even though you can get up to 12% damage reduction, it's really only giving you about 6 when you have this. So that's why I don't use that anymore. Put 4 points into Frenzy strictly because there's nothing in core that benefits our build. Defensives, we're going for additional max life because again this entire build works around our life. Damage reduction against elites. This is its entirely own damage bucket, which is why this is pretty vital to have. You're getting an actual 9% damage reduction. Rallying Cry, mainly use this because we are unstoppable, plus it triggers more cooldown reduction to our other important shouts. Plus it's giving us a little bit of Fortify, right? Iron Shield, or Iron Skin again. This is mainly to go off the imprint to make us unstoppable. I just put Fortify on there just because I always want to make sure I'm 100% fortified. But I don't really care about putting points into or anything. Again, I rarely use it. It's really only if I get stun locked or if I feel like I'm about to get stun locked. Challenging Shout, we use this mainly because we want this 20% bonus maximum life. But then this is what makes this build crazy, right? So you get 30% of your maximum life as Thorns. Well, when you add that with Outburst, this is 20% of your life. So you're basically getting 50% of your life between these two whenever this shout is up, right? Massive damage from Thorns. That's when I have everything up, talking, 14,000 Thorns from these two talents alone. On top of that, you're increasing your Thorns by 9%, and it causes your Thorns to do bleeding. But 9% increase, especially once you have over 10,000 Thorns damage, is pretty massive. So then we come down here, we're doing our Brawling Skills, we do War Cry. Now, we want War Cry. We don't really care about the damage, honestly, or the Berserking, because we can keep it up, but it's nice, right? It's a nice little cushion. Benefit is, this is what triggers off our Bear Clan ring because it's a brawling skill. So this is up very often, which helps reduce the cooldowns of these two abilities to make sure that we're never stun locked, as well as having this up as for the maximum amount of time so that we're doing massive Thorns damage. Over here, increases the shout skills, right? Want them to last long. Want the enemies to deal less damage. Again, this is its own damage reduction bucket because this isn't affecting your character, this is actually affecting the mob itself. So basically they have a curse on them or a debuff on them that's causing them to do 12% less damage, not taking you to take 12% less damage. So that's massive. So then over here, you can of course increase this, but I only like 1%. Because I like to keep in this injured zone. And if I take more than 1%, it pops me up. And so if you get up to like 40% health, an elite can actually one-shot you sometimes. So that's why I like 1%. Coming on down here, damage reduction against distant. Again, and some increased damage to close. It's not that important, but pretty nice. Oh, my internet went out. Sweet. Or maybe to kick me off for a second. Alright, so that's going over all the shouts, right? Now we get this here for the 90% damage reduction as well. Forgot to do that, so we get this, but here. 9% damage reduction while berserking. Pretty important as well. 9% increased damage to close enemies and gain 6% damage reduction. Or first distance. Again, not that important, but we take it just because there's really not too many other places to put our points at this point. Steel Grasp, the reason we put 5 points into this is to get that cooldown to 7.02. If I get rid of one, it's only a 0.3 second cooldown chance or reduction, but still worth it. Don't know what to do with the points anyways. Each time you take direct damage, you gain 1% base damage. It's Fortify. Helps that Fortify max. You can also get increased damage down here and extra damage reduction, but again, because the diminishing returns on damage reduction, I was only getting like 0.6% per click, so I was getting like 2% from a full. Just wasn't worth it to me. Came down here and got attack speed instead, and then increased Berserker's maximum duration by 5, so that means your Berserking duration can go up to 10 seconds, which allows you to stack this, which only gives you 2 seconds, as well as this, giving you 6 seconds, plus all of our duration increase to Berserking. So Berserking lasts basically the maximum duration when we're using these, and that's pretty huge for quality of life and damage reduction. So then to our Paragon. So the main gist of the Paragon is to grab as much strength as possible, as well as much life as possible. Physical damage does nothing for the Thorns build. We're just going here for life. So life. Going up here, we're putting Exploit in here. That's because we want vulnerable damage. Vulnerable is obviously the biggest multiplier in the game other than crit damage, and crit damage does nothing for us, so we're relying on vulnerable. This also is allowing that flames that are shooting out around us to apply vulnerability to all the mobs before our Thorns hits them for the first time, so it chunks them right away. So you want to grab as much dexterity in here to increase this vulnerability damage. I think I actually have all the dexterity that's possible. And then again, you don't care about physical damage, but I was just greedy and wanted the plus 10 strength since it was right next to here. Went armor to get up here. Also gives me more strength. Don't really care about resistances of the armor, just because it's not that big of a deal since I have the rings and amulet already for when I'm running. Over here we're getting Berserker's duration. We don't care about damage. This 5% bucket is basically nothing. The duration is what we're looking for. Coming back up here, we don't really care about any of these. I mean, this is pretty nice for quality of life, especially if you're doing speed runs and stuff. But for push builds, not necessary at all. Again, coming up here, just for life. That's all we care about. Coming down here, we're doing Ire. That's giving us damage reduction, as well as, which is 10% to our Berserking damage reduction. And then, of course, you get damage increase while Berserking for every strength node. So this is where I dumped a lot of my just extra Paragon points that I didn't know what to do with to give me extra strength. I just double dipped here to give me a little bit extra damage as well. Didn't really need any of these extras here, mainly because we get the all stats on all of our gear, so we don't really need willpower or any of that stuff. So we move on up. Get more Berserking, because again, didn't really care about potion healing and all that stuff. This Carnage stuff, pretty nice for Frenzy, just increases your attack speed even more. Not really that necessary, but honestly, my build was pretty nice, and I had like 15 extra points, so I just put this in here to increase some attack speed because it had a lot of strength on the way to it as well. But coming on up here, you're getting damage, more strength, but you're also putting your Thorns in here. Now that's not as big of a deal. The reason I put this in here mainly is for the 100% bonus to all rare nodes, giving me that extra strength because I love strength. And it's giving me a little bit extra damage reduction for close enemies. It says 9%, but again, from diminishing turns, I'm getting like 3.5 or 4% from that. So, still pretty nice. I do come on up here because, again, I want this Berserker duration. That's what I'm looking for. Makes it so that you have Berserking up 24/7. Going over here, you're coming up to get your damage reduction while fortified. And then you're coming down here, again, more life. And then Glyph, we're going with Territorial. That's giving us more damage reduction from close. Again, it's not really 10%, it's really, I don't know, 4. And it's also giving us some extra damage to close enemies. Now you can come up here, you can also get some damage reduction while healthy, but I really care about the damage reduction while injured, and 5% is really nothing. I don't even know really why I went over here other than to get this dexterity node and more strength. So coming on down here, I got some more max life. Physical damage doesn't matter. We're putting the martial glyph in here. This is giving us that 120%, 20 to 25% bonus to all magic, which is increasing all this invulnerable damage. Now, quick thing here, this board that I'm using, which is, I guess, Decimator. Now, I don't really care for any of these legendary nodes. They don't really affect Thorns. But this one, if you're leveling up, or if you're like a fresh 50 or whatever that level is, this should be your first board because vulnerable damage is just massive. But anyways, going back to this martial, so it's giving us that extra vulnerable damage, which is huge, and damage reduction from vulnerable enemies. And we always want to keep that vulnerable going on mobs. Plus, it's what's allowing us to reduce all the cooldowns to keep up the maximum life shout to give us the max Thorns damage. Come on down here, again, more max life. Coming down here for more vulnerable damage. So, that's the Paragon tree. So, that's the build. That's how it all works when it's in effect. I'll just pop this open real quick just to show you what those incense and everything does to the build and how that works. But I hope you guys enjoyed seeing the clear of the dungeon, and that, you know, it's intrigued a lot of you into looking at this type of build. I'm happy that Reddit blew up the way it did, and I loved all the comments and all that. It is a lot. I am definitely not a streamer or a YouTuber, so forgive the lack of editing and all that good stuff, but it is what it is. So just to show you, again, you can use this max life. I can use all 3 of these incense. So now I'm at 1,831 strength, 27,000 life. So when I hit this, now I'm at 32,000 life, guys. When I do all 3 of my shouts, you're looking at 8,600 armor, 12,500 attack power, and all that life, right? So, bunch of stuff, cool things to do. Good luck with your grinds, and thanks again for all the support. Don't forget to hit that sub button and show me some love, and I will continue to bring out some more information if that's what you guys want to see. Thanks again.